We've made it to the end of the NBA regular season, everybody, and I know I just did this intro in the last video that you saw, or maybe I'll put both videos up at the same time, but anyway, we made it to the end of the NBA regular season, and the play-in is here. Quick reminder to subscribe and like and do all those things. Thanks for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers. That's really awesome. I appreciate the love, but leave me some comments, man. Let's talk about this series. I'm going to be covering the playoffs very extensively. There'll be a lot of videos coming up, so actually hit subscribe. I'm not going to tell you to hit the notification bell. You probably don't want to see my name on your phone anyway, or whatever it is you do. But yeah, a lot of playoff basketball to talk about this week, and we're going to cover it all here. All right, that's enough shameless promotion. I can't stand doing that stuff, man. It's kind of cringy in all honesty, but you know what? You got to run the business at the end of the day. But hey, let's talk about Kings Warriors. Now, I just recorded the video talking about the Pelicans Lakers. Let's talk about the other Western Conference playoff game, and man, is this a good one. For those of you that don't know, I've kind of just been building these Google Sheets to help like diagram what's going on in my head and stuff. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but you know what? It is what it is, so this is kind of what my channel is at this point. But anyway, these two teams, do we call this a rivalry at this point? I think we have to call this a rivalry at this point. These two teams played each other 4 times this year. They just played in the playoffs last year, went to game 7, and if y'all don't remember, Steph Curry dropped a 50 ball in that game 7, and it was just electric. I was just like, I felt like a kid again, just watching Curry doing his thing. I'm 25, I'm not that old, but y'all know what I'm talking about. But this is a little bit different look. Not completely from like the Kings side, but the Warriors side. Things are looking a little bit different than they were last year. Warriors roster, obviously, a little bit more different, especially in terms of the depth chart and the players that we'll see on the court for them this year. And then Kings, obviously, without some very key players. But what we're gonna talk about in this is we're gonna talk about like matchups and how I see those working out. We'll cover just like some other little nitty-gritty things in the game, how we think it'll play out, and ultimately who I think is gonna win and everything. So yeah, let's talk about the matchups first. Let's start with the big men here. Draymond Green versus Domantas Sabonis, and this gets us into our first thing for the Warriors right away, which is their big man play. And with Draymond Green, we're also going to have to talk about Trayce Jackson-Davis. The Warriors obviously can never find any size to play for their team whatsoever. I don't know how this happens every year that they come with like nobody of any substantial size. But yeah, these are the two big men that they're probably going to be rolling with. Like Kevon Looney is healthy, but he's not playing that much right now, so I'm going to guess this is the lineup that they throw out for now. By the way, the reason I'm showing it this way in like this 8-person kind of segment is that's how much teams usually go in terms of their depth chart in the playoffs. Like as you go further up into the games, it might go to 7 or something like that, and you might see 9 guys get in, but it's usually just like some guy coming in for a little bit of defensive or offense, like a minute left in a half, so that someone can get a little bit extra rest or something like that, or maybe somebody got a little banged up and you want to keep the rotation pretty straight. But this is probably what the rotations are going to look like, or at least what I envision them looking like. But Draymond Green guarding Sabonis. Draymond Green has guarded players bigger than him his whole career. He's always been really good at it. Domantas Sabonis is an absolute monster, though. He's an absolute unit. He's very relentless. Like, he's one of those big men that when he goes up and gets rebounds, he does not look out at all. Like, y'all have played at the Y before where, like, where your big man gets a rebound and you're wide open for 3, and, like, you're like, hey, I'm open now. He's not looking at all. He's going right back up. He's trying to muscle. He's trying to draw a foul. He's trying to dunk on someone, and he's great at it, right? Absolutely elite. So how are you going to be able to box him out and kind of contend with him? Is this something where maybe you switch a Kuminga onto him at points? Maybe these guys are switching. Maybe all 3 of these guys are switching between Green, Kuminga, and Wiggins, because these guys are all somewhat similar athletes in that sense. I could see that being the case. Obviously, if you had a true center in like a Trayce Jackson-Davis, he'll be sticking on to him a little more so. Obviously, Trayce has been awesome for them this season and everything, but having to guard Domantas Sabonis is a whole nother monster. So that's going to be one of the main keys of the game right here, is how do they find a way to stop them? Does Kevon Looney have to come in a little bit more and help? Maybe. We got a battle of young guys here now. Kuminga versus Murray. 2 4s that are very quick off their feet. One of them a really good shooter. One of them not so good of a shooter in Kuminga. I think it's going to be valuable to have Keegan Murray out on the perimeter a lot more and spotting up, and hopefully he can attack some closeouts and stuff. Kuminga's usually pretty good at defending that stuff, but keeping Kuminga out of the paint, as he probably is the only thing that they really have close to like rim defense on the Warriors right now, is going to be valuable for Sacramento. So keeping Keegan Murray on the outside is going to be important, and then also can Kuminga attack Keegan Murray, right? Like Keegan's very athletic in himself, not nearly the defender that Kuminga is. So is this going to be something where like the Warriors can get some driving kick opportunities going and Kuminga can beat Murray off the dribble and try to get some buckets? Harrison Barnes, Andrew Wiggins, very identical players. One's a little bit further in his career, a la Harrison Barnes. Basically strong defensive wings that can get rebounds and shoot the ball a little bit. Wiggins has been playing better as of late. It was a pretty rough season for him, all said and done. It sounds like some personal issues were going on, and from just what I've heard from my connections, it's tough stuff, and that's all we'll say about it. But we wish Andrew Wiggins the best with all that. What are we going to get out of Wiggins? Are we going to get that elite rebounding small forward that's been hitting some shots and getting to the rim for them and stuff? Because he can beat just Harrison Barnes one-on-one, right? At this point, that's not something that I'm concerned about. But like, is that the attitude that we're coming in with, right? Offensively, Harrison Barnes is mostly just going to be a floor spacer, right? That's what he does. He's a very smart basketball player. If the Warriors ever go to a zone, which they usually prefer to play their bump off defense, Harrison Barnes is really good about kind of like the Thompson twins we saw this year, where he's really good at finding the spots on the zone and just go wait in these little open areas and catch a ball and get a nice little layup. So that I'll be interested to see that matchup, but I think Wiggins has a pretty clear advantage there. Now, this will be an interesting one. Pods versus Keon Ellis. You guys might not be too familiar with Keon Ellis if you don't watch Kings games. Obviously, they're on a little bit later at night, but with Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter both down for Sacramento, which is pretty catastrophic. Kevin Huerter was having a pretty bad season, all said and done. I've actually met Kevin Huerter before, good dude. But Kevin Huerter being down sucks. That's a really versatile player for you. And then Malik Monk is that's just horrible. He's probably sixth man of the year if he's healthy and just a completely dynamic and explosive scorer. So losing Malik Monk really sucks, but they've thrown Keon Ellis here into the first five, and they were like, well, yeah, this is kind of a defensive guy for us, like very defensive oriented, so you know what, we'll get scoring from other points between Fox, Sabonis, and Murray, and he's like been a quietly pretty good player for them. You can see here in the last 10 games, Keon Ellis, 10 points a game. He's been shooting 47% from three. He had a game where he hit like 8 threes or something like that, and that's just not something we expected out of him. And that's awesome. Like that's perfect. If he can keep that going, great, but the playoffs are a completely different beast. The good news, though, is hopefully he starts off the game against like a Pods or something, and maybe he can get himself going, because if they throw Clay back into the first five, I bet you Clay's like clamping him up and like just kind of freaking him out in a playoff game. Like that's just how I envision it happening to young players, but maybe they can find a way to get Keon Ellis going early. Obviously, Pod's very smart basketball player. I think he's probably going to struggle against the defense of Keon Ellis. I've watched Keon play a couple games now. Yeah, no, very good defensive player. So how can Pod stay involved, being a glue piece, making sure he's helping set screens for a Draymond Steph Curry thing that's going on, finding Kuminga when Kuminga's rolling, keeping Kuminga involved is just going to be a big thing, right? Making sure he doesn't get too down on himself at any point, making sure he gets his touches. That's where Pods is going to find his value. Very much a glue player guy in this starting five. Some interesting bench things going on. Let's actually start with Golden State because it's a little bit easier to explain. Klay Thompson actually been a pretty good scorer for them as of late. You can see here 22 points a game, shooting 41% from three, 42% from three as of late. And so Klay's been like catching, shooting, doing his thing. He's been Klay Thompson as of late. So that's good going into the playoffs. Obviously, you have a Chris Paul who you know is going to turn it up in the playoffs. He's going to be an extremely valuable player. So you'd have to assume that those two probably get more minutes than like a Kuminga in a Pods. Trayce Jackson-Davis might honestly be the technical sixth man in terms of minutes by the end of this thing. So that'll be interesting in itself. But yeah, Trayce Jackson-Davis, been a really good defensive player for them this year, been a completely different type of player for them with his rim running and everything, which I don't know why. Like, whenever I watch him, I still just don't get that excited about watching him play, but he's getting results, so I can't complain with that. So, nice 8-man rotation here at the end of the day. Plus, you still have Looney that you could throw in, so it's not big, but you've got something going on here. Obviously, this is the Golden State Warriors as well. This is just an elite basketball team that has just always found a way. So don't be surprised if this team just like kicks it into a high gear as soon as this game starts. But anyway, let's talk about the Kings. Davion Mitchell, been really, really good for them as of late. Let's go here. Davion Mitchell, about 9-10 points a game, shooting 42% from three in like their last 10 games. He was a guy that they were like, man, he's completely become like a bust since like his first season. He was getting worse and worse and worse, but like since he's kind of been reinserted into this lineup, he's been electric. His defense is good again. He's been scoring a little bit more again. You're seeing him get off the dribble too, which is nice because that was a big part of his game. He's a pretty quick dude, and I'm starting to see that now and seeing him be a distributor. that's awesome, right? If Davion Mitchell's cooking, that's going to be a big thing for them. But then after that, we get into some question marks. Trey Lyles is a very reliable player. Can he play anything outside of the 4 or a stretch 5? Probably not. Like, what you probably do is you probably move Keegan up to a 3 or something, especially against these teams like Wiggins and Kuminga are pretty, like, interchangeable players, and I would assume that those guys are playing the 3 or the 4. I'd have a hard time believing they throw, like, I don't even know. Yeah, they're not throwing anyone else really out there. Maybe they go small and Clay's playing a 3 at some point, but I wouldn't be too worried about that because, again, Clay's not really attacking you off the dribble anyway. So Lyles is mostly just going to be a floor spacer for them and grab some rebounds. He's very reliable. I always tell people he's the prototypical 78 overall in 2K. Very reliable player. And then as far as that, just another big man in Alex Len. I would assume that that's who they roll out as kind of their 8th guy. Just go have some size out there. Alex Len, not always the smartest defensive player, but at the end of the day, when you're 7'1", you got long arms, like you can be a disruptor. How is he going to fare against like a Draymond Green or something? Maybe that's kind of how they look to match it up on Golden State. Maybe they look to try and have Draymond playing center more when Len is in or something. It's mostly going to be Sabonis, but maybe that's like a go-to for them, and they try to really bring Alex Len out of the paint because he won't be able to function out there. So something to look out for. We can take a look at the comparison between the two teams here. Golden State's been better on the road than at home this year, which is weird. And Sacramento's been better home than on the road. So it's not a substantial difference by any means for these teams. I mean, these are pretty much 500 teams, right? So, well, I shouldn't call them 500. It's actually kind of crazy that you're 46 and 36 and you're like a 10 seed. But these two teams played against each other quite a bit this year, and they were all close. Like I said, y'all, this is a rivalry. Sacramento wins by 1. Sacramento wins by 1. Golden State wins by 1. And then Golden State beat them by like 8 in this game here. Curry was great, right? Curry's been great in every game against them. So can De'Aaron Fox actually guard these guys? I just realized I didn't even like compare these two of De'Aaron Fox and Steph Curry, the best 2 fucking players on these teams, right? You can... Well, we'll say what we want to say about Sabonis and everything. He might be the best player, but I'm going to say it's Fox for now. But De'Aaron Fox versus Steph Curry, man. Steph Curry, you guys know what Steph Curry does and everything. They're probably going to play bump-off defense at some point so that guys like Pods and stuff will get switched on to Fox, more so in pick and roll or when he's trying to attack the rim. That's what the Warriors do. How can De'Aaron Fox stop Steph Curry? He's going to have a lot of energy. He's going to have to run around a lot of screens. They're going to have to communicate. Maybe Keon Ellis gets switched on to Curry at some point. That's a lot of pressure for the dude to be under, especially in his first like real playoff experience and everything. That's a lot to ask of the kid, but you know what? You got to grow up at some point, and maybe that's what they do. So maybe there's a lot of interchanging that's happening between like these guys here and these guys here. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. That's where we're going to draw the line, is kind of like here. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of switching between the front court here and then the back court in general. So it's kind of interesting how those can match up. Anyway, though, these are both two talented offensive teams. The stats are pretty identical in most spots here. You see a little bit more like steals per game out of Sacramento, which doesn't surprise you when you have guys like Fox out there, right? But otherwise, like, you look at 3-point percentages, like pretty similar. Golden State Warriors, slight advantage, and these are just two teams that like to shoot the ball a lot. So how are they going to be able to defend the 3-point line? Is Keon Ellis really going to be like a differentiator for them? It'll be hard to say. All right, but who do we think is going to come out of this game? Give me the Warriors, unfortunately. I'm so sorry, Sacramento Kings fans. This just feels like one of those things where the Warriors are just going to look like the Warriors again, and they're going to fight their way into the playoffs, and everyone's going to be scared of them again. I think you're going to get a big game out of Curry because it's happened every time they've played. I'm sure they're going to try to throw something different at him, but I just feel like it's Steph Curry, man. It's what he's going to do. I feel like Clay's going to have a big game. I think Chris Paul is going to have a big game. Hopefully, Draymond Green doesn't stomp on Sabonis like he did last year when they play and get suspended. So we'll hope that doesn't happen. We just don't want to see anybody get suspended. But for Sacramento to win, I think Keegan Murray's going to have a really big game, and I think they're going to have to maybe put Draymond on him at some point and then throw like Trace Jackson Davis in at the center. Like, I feel like that's how they're going to want to play it. So I think that has to happen because I'm not so sure you're going to get a big game out of Harrison Barnes or Keon Ellis, and Davion Mitchell obviously has been sporadic his whole career. So hard to say, but it's going to come down to that, in my opinion. So give me the Warriors on this one. I'm sure they're going to be favorites in it, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. But yeah, you guys let me know. I'm going to make sure that I'm covering the results of these games throughout the week. So again, make sure you subscribe so you can see everything. And yeah, appreciate you guys as always. Leave me a comment. Who's going to win this game and what do you think is going to be the key? But until then, we'll see y'all later.